Welcome back to Compassion Over Silence. I'm Rashida Saunders. Today we're talking about the loneliness of leadership and why carrying responsibility can feel so isolating. And I want to start with something I don't think enough leaders say out loud. You can be surrounded by people all day and still have absolutely no one you feel like you can talk to. I've had days where I moved from conversation to conversation, meeting, phone call, text message. Someone needs an answer. Someone needs a decision. Someone needs help solving a problem. Someone needs me to listen. Someone needs me to fix something I did not break. And by the end of the day, I've talked to everybody, and somehow I haven't actually talked to anyone. You know what I mean? I've been available, I've been responsive, I've been useful, but I haven't necessarily been known. And I think there's a difference. That difference is where leadership can become incredibly lonely. I remember realizing at one point in my life that I had become very good at being the person people called. Need something? Call Sheeta. Problem? Call me. Something complicated? Rashida will figure it out. And listen, there is a part of me that loves that. I like being dependable. I like solving problems. I like helping people. I like getting things done. I genuinely do. There is something deeply satisfying to me about taking a situation that feels complicated and saying, okay, let me see what we can do. But there is a hidden cost to becoming the person everyone calls. Eventually, you have to ask yourself, who do I call? And I don't mean who is in your phone. Most of us have people in our phones. I mean, who can you call without performing? Who can you call when you don't have the answer? Who can you call when you are angry and know you are not being completely rational yet? Who can you call when you need someone to tell you the truth, not simply agree with you? Who can you call when the decision is yours, but you wish, just for a moment, it wasn't? That is a different question. One of the things we don't talk about enough is how lonely leadership can become. Not because leaders don't have people around them. Often they have more people around them than ever before. More meetings, more conversations, more responsibility, more visibility, more people saying, do you have a minute? And by the way, do you have a minute? Has never meant a minute. Never. Nobody walks into your office and says, do you have a minute? Because they need 60 seconds. That sentence could mean anything. A quick question, a 45-minute conversation, a workplace conflict, a resignation, a crisis, a story that begins in 2017. You don't know. But somehow, as responsibility grows, there are more conversations, more people, more access, and sometimes less honesty, less openness, less connection. Leadership often becomes lonely long before anyone notices. It doesn't begin with an empty office. It doesn't begin with a quiet drive home. It begins the moment people start relating to your position differently than they relate to you. And leadership can get weird that way. Nobody really warns you about that. You get a title or more authority or more influence, and suddenly people start acting differently. A joke you made 6 months ago? Funny. Same joke after a promotion? Now somebody is analyzing organizational culture. You walk into a room and the conversation changes. People say, no, we weren't talking about anything. And you're thinking, well, you were definitely talking about something. People become more careful, more agreeable, sometimes more strategic. And if you're not paying attention, you can start believing the room is more honest than it actually is. That is dangerous. Because one of the easiest things to mistake in leadership is silence for agreement. Everyone nodded, nobody objected, no one raised a concern. So we assume everyone is aligned. Maybe. Or maybe they had the real conversation before you arrived. Maybe they'll have it after you leave. Maybe they learned a long time ago that disagreeing with leadership is expensive. Maybe they are waiting to see whether you actually want honesty or whether you want confirmation. This is where leadership becomes complicated. Because sometimes the loneliness isn't only about not having someone to talk to. Sometimes it's about no longer knowing whether people are telling you the truth. I have been in rooms where I could feel people measuring their words. And if I'm being fair, I have probably created moments where people felt like they needed to. That is not easy for me to say, because I would love to believe that everyone who has ever worked with me has always felt completely comfortable telling me exactly what they thought. I would love that story. It's a beautiful story. I'm just not convinced it's true. Because I am human. I have had moments when I was tired, moments when I was defensive, moments when I thought I was listening but was really waiting for my turn to explain. Moments when my face probably said something before my mouth had the opportunity to be professional. And listen, my face and I have been in negotiations for years. We are still working on it. That is part of leadership, too. Recognizing that your intention and someone else's experience of you may not always match. As responsibility grows, something else happens. People begin looking to you for certainty, even when you're carrying questions of your own. That is one of leadership's quiet paradoxes. The very position that places someone at the center of an organization can slowly move them to its emotional edges. Everyone is asking, "What do you think? What should we do? What's the plan? What's the answer?" And sometimes you are thinking, "I would also like to know." But you're the leader. So you gather the information, you make the call, you communicate confidence. And then sometimes you sit in your car afterward. I think cars deserve more credit in leadership literature. Truly. Some of the most honest moments of my life have happened sitting in a parked car. Not driving, just sitting there, bag in the passenger seat, phone face down. Maybe one hand still on the steering wheel for absolutely no reason, just staring. Because sometimes the car is the first place all day where nobody needs anything from you. No decision, no answer, no response, no leadership, just quiet. And sometimes that quiet feels peaceful. Sometimes it feels heavy, because once no one is asking you to be strong, you finally notice how tired you are. Many leaders respond to that feeling the same way. We become more self reliant. We convince ourselves we shouldn't need support, that asking questions might undermine confidence, that uncertainty should remain private, that we should be able to handle it. After all, isn't that why they chose us? Isn't that why we have the title? Isn't that why people trust us? So we carry more stress, conflict, grief, difficult decisions, disappointment, the conversation we can't repeat, the personnel issue we can't discuss, the decision people are angry about but we cannot fully explain, the knowledge that someone will be disappointed no matter what we choose, not because we want to carry it alone, because sometimes we genuinely cannot share everything. That is an important distinction. Leadership loneliness is not always self created. Sometimes responsibility comes with confidentiality. Sometimes ethics require restraint. Sometimes protecting someone else means you cannot defend yourself publicly. Sometimes you know more than you are allowed to say, and that can be incredibly isolating. From the outside, it looks like strength. From the inside, it can feel like carrying a conversation no one else knows you're having. The problem isn't simply that loneliness hurts. It's that loneliness changes the way we lead. Isolation narrows our perspective. Feedback feels more personal. Disagreement feels more threatening. Correction feels like criticism instead of collaboration. Without trusted relationships, it becomes surprisingly easy to mistake silence for agreement, or independence for resilience, or exhaustion for commitment, or control for leadership. None of that happens because someone is automatically a bad leader. It happens because they're a human leader. And human beings do not become less human when we receive a title. We still need perspective. We still need correction. We still need places where we can be uncertain. We still need people who are unimpressed by our job title. Actually, I highly recommend having at least one person in your life who is deeply unimpressed by you, someone who loves you, supports you, believes in you, and will still say, "Girl, no." That is a gift. You need people who do not need access to your power, people who are not trying to impress you, people who can hear your version of the story and still ask, "Okay, But what did you do? Those people are protective because isolation can distort us. If everyone around you depends on you, works for you, reports to you, needs something from you, or is afraid to disappoint you, you can slowly lose access to honest reflection. And none of us are wise enough to lead without honest reflection. Many organizations unintentionally reward composure more than connection. We celebrate the leader who carries everything. We admire the person who never seems overwhelmed. We praise the one who never lets anyone see them struggle. The leader answers emails at midnight, dedicated, never takes time off, committed, always available, exceptional, carries the emotional weight of the entire team without support, strong. And somewhere along the way, we confuse emotional isolation with leadership maturity. They're not the same thing. Healthy leadership doesn't require us to carry everything alone. It requires us to stay connected while carrying significant responsibility. And I want to say something here that I think organizations often miss. Leadership development should not stop at teaching leaders how to support everyone else. We train leaders to coach, to mentor, to communicate, to manage conflict, to motivate teams, to recognize burnout, to create psychological safety. Wonderful. Who is supporting them? Who asks the leader the difficult question? Who notices when the person holding everyone else together is becoming increasingly isolated? Who creates space for leaders to say, I don't know, I need perspective, I'm struggling with this decision, I think I got that wrong? Organizations also have a responsibility to support their leaders. That means creating cultures where mentorship is normal, where honest feedback is expected, where trusted peers can ask difficult questions, where leaders don't have to pretend they're unaffected by the weight they carry. Connection isn't a luxury, it's a protective factor. And maybe one of the most important questions we can ask isn't, how do we make stronger leaders? Maybe it's, how do we make sure leaders don't have to lead alone? Because the strongest leaders I've known weren't the ones who carried everything by themselves. They were the ones who remained connected while carrying great responsibility. They had people, not crowds, not followers, not employees, people. People who could challenge them, people who could remind them who they were before the title. People who could say, you're tired, you're taking this personally, you need to apologize, you need to go home, you need to stop sending emails tonight. And sometimes, you need to eat something before making this decision. That is leadership support too. So I want to leave you with a question, not a leadership assessment, not a 5-step framework, just a question. Who do you call when you don't have the answer? When the decision is heavy, when you are angry, when you are hurt, when you are wrong, when you are tired of being the person everyone depends on? Who knows you beyond your usefulness? Because leadership does not become healthier when leaders become less human. It becomes healthier when they no longer have to face the weight of leadership in isolation. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Compassion Over Silence. If this conversation resonated with you, follow the podcast and share this episode with someone